I don't want to be a second-class citizen. That's a statement I made a couple of times before deciding to immigrate. Now I've been here for 4 years, and I'm thinking, do I feel like a second-class citizen? Immigration in itself is as old as mankind. In fact, depending on how you want to go, even if you go through the theological way or you want to go through evolution, I kind of gravitate a little bit towards evolution. Migration has been a major factor to how the world as we know it right now was formed. And even if you go through theology, it's still the same thing. It was migration, right? People moved away from where they were and they went into the world and they kept multiplying and replicating and they started becoming more. And they kept going further to see, okay, what is out there? What is better out there? So sometimes, are you not doing a disservice to yourself if you just decide, I'm just going to sit here? But at the same time, then you have argument that says, if everybody leaves, who's going to stay? That's funny. I'm going to use Nigeria as an example. A lot of people are arguing about the fact that there is a brain drain in the country. A lot of educated people are leaving the country, and they're talking about immigration, what's going to happen to the future of the country. And my argument has always been, first of all, if you look at the data, we have about the same number of immigrants to emigrants, with a percentage of those living less than 1%. You know, we've heard a lot of stories about first-class students who can't find a job. I used to think that was impossible for you to have a first-class degree and not get a job until I met someone that had a first class and couldn't get a job. It's the reality that you would have first-class graduates in Nigeria not getting a job. Does it make sense for the person then to decide that they're just going to rot away in the country out of patriotism and try to fight the power? Or is it better for that person on the street who is really smart to find a way to become a better version of themselves by perhaps going abroad to study, so they can find a pathway in which they can study and work in another country that will value their brain capacity, and then become a better version of themselves, have better money, then can be able to make decisions even in their country, not just by sending money back home, but by investing in the country. Now, there are a lot of constraints to that. I understand that it's not that easy for you to just pick up and say you want to go to another country, right? Immigration is not that easy. Most of the countries, the first world countries, the Western world, kind of put a lot of high bar for you to be able to come in, because they're also looking for the best of the best. So it's not just for everybody to be able to move. You're going to have to prove that, and sometimes money is also involved. But they would argue that they don't want it to be a burden. That's the major reason. So money becomes a problem. But what happens? There are scholarships also that could actually help you to be able to get the education that you want to be able to move into that country. It might be hard, but you're going to have to do a lot of research. You're going to have to do a lot of writing to be able to prove that you need that scholarship. You owe it to yourself as a person to be a better version of yourself. It is your responsibility to yourself and to your entire family and to everyone who knows you to be a better version of yourself, irrespective of where you want to be. If you think that the best place you're going to be the better version of yourself is home, that's your home country, then as well, just stay there. But be sure that you're not just whiling away time and you're just fading into non-existence, if you know what I mean. You don't want to do that to yourself. If there are no opportunities where you are, do what our ancestors did. When I say our ancestors, based on evolution, everybody came from Africa anyway, right? So do what everyone has done since time immemorial. Even animals do that. When animals try to feed in a place and they see there's no food there anymore, what they do is move. It doesn't make sense for you to say, out of loyalty to your country, you're just going to sit down there and perish. So, if you're that person and things don't look necessarily good, look for the legal way, look for the best legal way for you to do it. And there's so many opportunities now. The Western world isn't stupid. In fact, you would even say even Russia isn't stupid, because Russia also gives you opportunity to be able to immigrate to their country. Most countries understand that human capital is the most important factor to growth. So they try to tap. It's just like a company trying to poach new talent. They know what they're doing. And you have something You have something that the world wants. Doesn't make sense for you to sit down on what you have out of loyalty to your home country. Go out there, be a better version of yourself. You're doing it for yourself. And then after doing it for yourself, you become a better version for your home country. Just look around your country and think about people who have gone out and come back and become quite influential in the country. There's that respect for it because you've been able to achieve something. You will probably not be able to achieve that if you had just sat on your hands. However, if you don't have the opportunity, then build yourself up to the opportunity. I don't think everybody should immigrate. I've always said that, so it's not like everybody has to immigrate. It's not possible. And they all talk about what happens if everyone immigrates, who's going to remain. The truth is, everybody cannot immigrate. It's not even possible. Now, back to what I was talking about. 4 years after, do I think I'm a second-class citizen? At all. I would even argue that I feel much more, I feel like my rights are much more respected here than in Nigeria. You know what I mean? Back in Nigeria, if you're affluent, if you have money, if you have influence, for instance, I worked in the oil and gas sector. We had a police department in our company such that if you run into any trouble, you can call the police department. So if a policeman also tries to stop you and try to extort you on the road, you can call that number and they'll come to your rescue, And then, of course, I also worked in banking where I had some friends in the military. So if I ran into some issues sometimes with the police, the way it is in Nigeria is such that the police is kind of afraid of the military. Everyone is afraid of the military, right? So sometimes if I pick up a call and I call like a colonel, and the colonel speaks to them on the phone, everyone is shaking. Those are things that are, whether we like it or not, oppressive in itself. And a lot of us did it, but you had to do it to survive. So you're not necessarily doing it like you're calling someone to beat up someone, but what happens to the guy that can't call the colonel or who can't call a phone number to rescue him? Some of them just get locked up and they throw away the keys. You already know about what happened with the NSAS. There was a reason for that. And that's one thing that happens in a country like Nigeria. Now, people would then argue. The argument would then be the reason, and I mean, the major reason people would say that I don't want to be a second-class citizen, why I used to say it back then, is because you see it on TV, right? Racism. And does racism exist? Hell yeah, it does. Racism does exist. The population of blacks, for instance, in Canada is just, I think, about 3% or so. Whereas in the US, I think it's about 12%, and they have more population of blacks. But even with that in the US, which is what most of us saw in the media, right? You see a lot of racism, right, on TV. Now, I don't live in the US, so I can't answer for the US. But I live in Canada. Have I experienced racism here? I don't know. I honestly don't know. And that's the truth. It depends on your perspective. It depends on how you see it. I think if you tell me to guess, there would have been some racial innuendos towards me. I would say that. But for me, it depends on what you open your mind to or what you're looking out for. However, it's not that simple because sometimes the problem with racism is it also affects your progress at work, for instance, for opportunities and the likes. So I'm not trying to oversimplify it, right? But I'm talking about the everyday to-day incidents. I don't like to take racism lightly because a lot of people actually fought for where we are today, both on the right and the black side, right? So everyone, there were some white people that fought for racism to stop, and there were a lot of black people that lost their lives fighting for us to have equality. The reason we have the liberty we have is because people fought. So if I see people still clamoring, I think it's a good thing, because the fact is that there is still racism today. So people standing up and putting up a front to fight against racism is a good thing. Where I have a problem is when people overdo it. When people when people ascribe minor things that are just on the peripheral as racism, I think it loses me. For me, there's some things that are not deep. I'm not saying don't talk about it, but blowing it out of proportion, I think it loses in my opinion, I actually even think it does a disservice to those that have actually gone through the true racism. That's what I feel. If you have kids, I'm okay with being the only black person in an all-white state in 2022. Let's be specific, okay? That wouldn't happen. Be very nice in like early 1900s, right? You probably get lynched and spat at us. And that's what I was saying. 2022 is a different time. But for kids, I think it's a little bit hard on them because they really don't get it. And I think kids are too young to start exposing them to what racism could be. And I don't know. What I would suggest when people come to Canada is have an idea of the demography of where you're going to. I think it's always good for you to have a little black community, if possible. I mean, a friend of mine would always tell me about when they first moved to Hamilton, where I stay. And he said when they first moved, there were practically very few of them that were blacks, not even Nigerians. But now you have a large Nigerian community, for instance, in Hamilton. That for me is a good thing, because I just feel communities are kind of helps you ease into the society a little bit better. It is the reason why when you're applying for your PR, you get points for having family, because they feel like that's going to help you integrate better. They know that that's important. Do I feel like a second-class citizen? No, I don't. I understand the fact that I'm a minority, but you have equality here and your rights are well respected, and that's a good thing. And if there's anything about Canada that I kind of like, is the fact that people, they show you respect, right? Most people show you respect. The cops will show you respect. Most people will show you respect everywhere you go to. What they say behind you is a different ball game, right? And that's what I say. If you don't say it to my face, just think about it this way. How in the offices sometimes people talk about their bosses, but you're not going to say it to your boss's face. I don't want to be the judge and say there's no racism in Canada. I know there is racism in Canada, definitely. There are racial crimes that people have actually been convicted of. So there is racism in Canada. Do I want to say there is not so much, or the level of racism? I can't. I can only speak about my own perspective. You guys, tell me what you think about this. How would you really rate racism in Canada? And for those of you that are also in maybe the UK or the US, tell me what you feel about racism in your country, and how would you treat it, and what do you regard as racism, right? Let me know. And do you think you're a second-class citizen in your country? Do you feel that way? Let me know. Please drop a comment and let's make this interactive. And if you haven't liked this video, come on, click on the like button. And if you haven't subscribed, click on the subscribe button and click on the notification button so you get notified every time we drop a video. For instance, if you'd like to see the discussion I had with my friends in Calgary, you can click on this video. And remember, it's the Deliberate Experts, and have a beautiful day.